Hey guys, we're back. This time we're going to be taking a look at Red Dragon Inn 6, the Villains box. And this one adds a new thing to the game that we saw something similar in Red Dragon Inn 4, I believe it was, where they had the deck for being on the ship, the sea event deck. This one has a dungeon event deck, but it's also got a completely new mechanic where all of the characters in this are evil villains. And in addition to being new characters that you can play in your normal Red Dragon Inn games, all of them come with an additional deck of cards that can be added to theirs to be used as like a boss battle type thing where other players play against them. So it's like a, where it's a one versus many type thing. And interesting new mechanic, cool new stuff in here, and we're going to get right in and take a look. So the first thing on top here we have is our rules flyer, and my box is a mess because I sleeved the cards and they don't fit back in, but we'll get to that. The rules flyer here is actually considerably thicker than most of them have been. I think I'm going to replace the one that I keep in my character trove with this one because it has all of the new special rules. So you can see here there's a section talking about the boss battle cards. These do not get shuffled into the normal decks unless you're playing that boss mode. Then they have the basic rules on how to play the game, which we've had many times. So then there's a section that gets into specific rules for various cards, drinks, and then specific rules based on cards that are in the set. Then we have a section on our new dungeon events. And they work exactly like the sea events did. You're going to have a deck of these cards. They're going to be face down. You start the game with two little counters on there. And at the end of each turn, you remove a counter. When there's no more counters, you flip it over. You're going to have the type of it up here. Some entertaining artwork. What actually happens down here. And this number up there is how many counters you put on top of the deck for the next card before it's revealed. There's even a way to play where you can combine the dungeon events with the sea events, where you're basically teleporting back and forth between the dungeon and the ship. And sometimes even both of them may come up in a single turn, which is kind of cool. And then we have our specific character stuff in the back. It talks about the four new characters that are in this set, and each one of them has a new mechanic. Well, three of the four have new mechanics. The other one's kind of pretty basic, but she has some interesting abilities. On the very back here, we got a section on new variants to the game. There's a team variant, which you have these potions that you can use to heal yourself. You also share your defense and alcohol content. And then this section's all just rules on the team play, how everything works in a team game. There's a big section here with specific rules for certain characters and how they pertain to team games. Assume that'll have to be updated as new characters are added and new abilities, but it covers everything up to this point. And there's a section in the back here for Two-Headed Dragon, yet another new variant, as well as the boss battle. Both of these kind of require you to use the rules that were on the previous pages for team battle, so you'll need to know all of that. But the boss battle, of course, has special rules for each of the decks. Any of the villain decks can be used as a boss. And they have cool new abilities and things. And there's two-headed boss battle, boss versus boss battle. Lots of interesting things. And then another section in the back which is specific notes on various cards and how they interact. Overall though, it's kind of got like part FAQ in there, part rule book, and then the normal rules flyer you get to explain the new characters. Like I said, I'm probably going to use this one to replace the one that I keep in my character trove because it has so much more in it. So onto the actual box here. Now normally this is all set up the same way that all the other main boxes of Red Dragon Inn have been. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 here. 5 is a little different because it came with the big treasure trove, but it's a mess right now because I sleeved my cards and then they don't fit back into the slots very well once they're sleeved. Even with these perfect fit sleeves, they just barely fit in there and then they're kind of hard to get out, so I just keep them tipped up on the side. They're all going to go into my character trove anyway, so that's why I didn't really bother. Just kept everything in here to make this video. We have our new player boards. These follow the ones that came in the RDI 5. That came with one for every character up to date, so all your new characters now are going to come with these. And it seems like a wasted opportunity. I wish they'd put like the fluff stories on the back of these. But they all have character-specific artwork, and then they have different sections on them based on what abilities those characters have. And these are cool and thematic, but I still like the original, really thick board ones that came with Red Dragon Inn 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we tend to use those a lot. I actually keep one of these older boxes. I think my Red Dragon Inn 1 box with those in it, just specifically to bring along with the trove so we can use those. But these are neat because of the segmented off slots for like him. He's got a token supply that goes over here. He's got his decks that go across the top here. And you have your deck, discard, and drink me pile along the bottom. So they added extra slots and customized them to each character's abilities, which is kind of neat. So this even has the original box layout where there's a cutout in the center for those bigger boards that they don't use anymore. It's kind of indented here. In the very middle here we have our new event deck for the dungeon events. And these are going to lay face down, probably in the middle of your table. You're going to put these dungeon tokens on there. They look like little dungeon doors. And you start with 2 on there. At the end of each turn you remove 1. When there's no more on there, you're going to flip this over. And here's your event at the top. At the bottom is the effect of what's going to go on. A lot of them have choices between 2 things. Either you have to sacrifice some health or some gold to do something. If everybody does something, there's an extra bonus. So you kind of talk other people into helping out. These ones, I haven't gone through all of them yet, so I don't know exactly what all's in here, but there's some interesting ones. I'm basing this off the C deck ones because I haven't actually gone through all of these yet, but they function very similar. And then at the top here you have 3. This number is going to change on them. That's how many tokens you put on the next one, so that when those tokens are gone, you'll reveal the next one, and so on. And there's a variety of different numbers and events in here that can occur. Those are cool because they're like a modular component that can be added to any of your Red Dragon Inn games. You don't have to play with the dungeons in play. You don't have to play these characters with the dungeons in play. They can be combined with any set of Red Dragon Inn or not used at all. You can even combine them with the other C event deck, which is kind of neat. And there's a lot of weird random tokens in here. We have our potions. These are used for the multiplayer variants. We also have these action tokens, which are used in the multiplayer events, where if you haven't taken your action yet, or you have, you flip them. I think that's how they're used. Haven't actually played that variant yet, but I know they're in there. Set comes with the classic glass bead, alcohol, and fortitude markers, which I actually prefer these. We even use them on the new charts. I just like the glass beads. Very nostalgic. They also come with a full set of the standard cardboard alcohol and fortitude markers, though, so you can use either or, whichever one you feel like. We have a new set of card dividers. These are used in your character trove to separate the decks out from the others. And as I said with those ones, they have the little fluff story on the back and the good and the bad about the characters. Wish these were on the back of the playmats, though, because what happens with these is you've got these separating all the decks in your box. People take this out to read it, and they flip it over and they're reading it. Well, now there's no divider between those 2 decks, and it's just a pain. I would have loved to have been able to keep the dividers in there and been able to look at the story someplace else. But they function for what they're meant for. And they have the 6 on there to indicate that they're from Red Dragon Inn 6. There's one for each of our new characters. There's one for the new drink deck that comes with RDI 6 here. And a new one for promo drinks to separate out your promo drinks from your various drink decks. As with all the other Red Dragon Inn box sets, you got plenty of coin tokens here to use to play a game right out of the box. I think there's actually more than you need here. And these are the larger ones found in the base sets. I actually like the larger coin tokens better than the smaller ones that come with the ally expansions, These ones just feel more satisfying to toss around the table when you join in gambling and whatnot. We replaced ours with actual metal coins, not the Red Dragon Inn ones because they're a little pricey, but we found some Japanese feng shui coins, I think they are. And the icon that's on them is actually two dragons, which kind of fit the theme, so we use those. Game also comes with two of these Torg coins, which are actually oddly cut on purpose. So if you get yours, they're not deformed. They're supposed to be oddly cut. And they have Torg space on them. He's one of the new characters in here. They're just kind of fun and thematic. They're not even the same with each other. They're both cut completely different. They're just funny. Curious if they're going to make those, now that they started making metal tokens for various things, if they're going to make the metal Torg coins to match the metal coin set if you bought the official ones. Be interesting. So as with all the big box sets like this, we have a new drink deck, so it's completely playable right out of the box. There's 30 drinks in here. Most of them are themed to this expansion of the villains. And there's some entertaining stuff in here. A couple duplicates, of course, of the more common ones. And some classic throwbacks to original stuff. But a good chunk of them are new and fit to the theme of the deck. Always nice to have another option in drink decks too. Of course, you can mix and match any or all of your drink decks too. So into our characters here. First we have Togglesnarf Dungleton, first of his name, the Goblin King. And his deck's primarily focused around his henchmen. And of course the first half or so is the standard fare of gambling cards and whatnot. Then you get into ones like these. You don't need a winning hand when you've got enough goons. Doesn't matter if you win a round of gambling or not. You basically, the round ends and you take the gold. There's also a fun one where, how about a friendly game of cards where you start a round of gambling and it can't be negated. And there's one other one in here that's interesting. Yeah, the let's make this game interesting. As soon as somebody wins a round of gambling, you play this card. And it continues and everybody has to ante again. And now you're currently winning. So you have to keep going. And he's got some fun things like the Wench, bring us one of everything. It's pay gold, buy 3 extra drinks. There's some standard, I like the we don't think so instead of I don't think so. And then most of the rest of his deck is cards that are basically his goons either stealing money or redirecting violence. All the violence money can buy. Some of these have cool abilities like redirecting damage and things like that in here. They just kind of fit in with his theme overall. And then the last handful of cards in here are his minions. And these work just like any other action card. When you play them, they remain face up in front of you though. And some of them have ongoing effects. Some of them do things during other players' turns. And they all have this wage thing up here. And when somebody chooses to attack Togglesnarf, they can choose whether to attack his minions or him. Anything that makes him lose fortitude. And if the minions are hit, they go away, go to the discard pile. Unless you pay them their wages to get them to stick around. So, kind of an interesting new mechanic, and there's some interesting guys in there that really help him out. And also as a side note, Togglesnarf does start with 2 extra gold coins. You can use the Torg coins that come in the set, or just any regular coins will work. They really don't do anything, they just give him extra. These actually pertain to a card he has that says, actually, it has my name. It does have my name on it. And he stamped his face and name on the coins. As with all the other villains, he also has this little additional deck of cards. And these ones are designated by having the dragon heads up here in the corners. And these only get shuffled into his deck if you're using him as a boss character and you're using the rules for boss fights. And they basically just beef him up to make his deck stronger for using those boss fights. And as with most characters, he's got pretty much the same cards. The artwork on them makes them a little hard to determine, so you really got to pay attention to the words here. But he's got his gambling cards to take control of a round of gambling. There's his cheating cards in there, dropping out. Then there's your basic gambling I'm in, I raise, winning hand. And then your I don't think so. Then there's a handful of cards towards the back here which are unique to his deck. And his mechanic is that he has these little blood drops on his cards, and whenever you play a card that has those, you'll get these little blood drop tokens that you add onto your player board. And those blood drop tokens allow you to buy form cards. There's also, towards the back here, a few abilities that cost you blood in order to use. So keep those in mind as well. His form decks, he has his Vampire Wolf and Vampire Bat forms. You'd think it'd be Werewolf and Bat, but who knows. But these start out in play. At the beginning of the game, you're going to draw your normal hand from there, and one card from one of these decks you get to choose. Then from then on, anytime you want one of these cards, you have to pay the 2 blood there to draw a card from those decks. On the flip side, they give him cool new abilities based on the form he's in. Again, some of these cards will generate more blood too. And they're all basically different based on the form you take. The Bat form cards tend to be more about avoiding certain circumstances or situations or ignoring things, where the wolf-themed cards seem to be a little bit more aggressive about dealing direct damage. As with all the villains, he has his boss deck cards. His are a little different than most, though, as only, I think, 5 of the cards have the normal back and get shuffled into your deck. The other 8 cards are actually a new form deck, which is a Vampire Monstrosity, which functions just like the other decks that you can pay the blood to draw a card from, and then use these for whatever type of card they are to basically stomp people in your one versus many format using the bosses. And the next one you have here is Daraka the Mindbreaker. I don't know if I'm saying that right. She's a deep one mentalist, which she has tentacles. It's very creepy. And as with all characters, you got a good chunk of the basic cards in here just for normal use. But then you start getting into her weird stuff. She doesn't have an actual extra mechanic or deck of cards like most of the other ones does. Everything is in her main deck. And she has a lot of cards that allow her to take control of other people. Like this one, which is, my friend will play this hand for me. You get to pick somebody else, look at their hand, discard a gambling or cheating card from it, and then take control of the round of gambling. There's your basic I don't think so's. This rarely leads to permanent damage. I love it. And this one allows you to raise their alcohol content and then draw a card. This one's kind of a take that reflection card. There's the one where you get to convince somebody else to drink your drink. As with the other bosses, she has her own extra deck of cards with the dragon emblems for her boss battle. And I think she's got a couple more of the same in here. And then there's ones in there where you can basically redirect enemies' attacks versus each other. There's a neat one where you can, I think it's that one where you can use people as a shield. Some very interesting things in there. Very scary character when you start getting into things like mind control. And then finally we have Amandir, I think I'm saying that right, the Cursed, who's an elf mummy. I always thought in most fantasy elves were kind of immortal. They didn't really become mummies, but hey. And again, big chunk of the basic cards in here. And then you get into her really interesting stuff towards the back here. Yeah, don't mind the scarabs, they're just exploring. And there's a bunch of, these don't use iconography like a lot of them, so you got to really pay attention to the text. But they have these, pick a player, they lose a fortitude, they gain 2 scarabs. And there's a bunch of different ones in here that allow players to gain scarabs. In fact, almost all of these do when you get towards the back here. And that's really her power, is to pass out these little scarabs. And they're represented by these little scarab tokens, and there's a bunch of different ones. I think there's like 4 different kinds, and you get multiples of each. And you pass these out to people, and then at the end of the player's turn, when they have a scarab, they give one back to her. In exchange, they lose one fortitude. So basically, she sends these scarabs out, and as long as you have them, you're losing one fortitude each turn that you still have one. And the good thing is she has a limited supply of them, so when they're all passed out, she can't give out any more. But people constantly giving them back to her, one per person every turn, so she's going to get a pile back to pass back out later on. And then with all the other villains, she has her boss deck cards here. Again, more of the same. I think there's some take control of gambling ones in here. She has interesting ones too, and I'm not sure if there's many in her actual deck, but they give you a choice. The player can lose fortitude, or if they ignore this card, they still get a scarab, so you're still doing something. And you get card draw, which is nice. But very interesting. I really like the way that character works and those delayed tokens to pass out. And if she's eliminated from the game, any tokens of the scarabs that are already passed out remain in play, unlike most games where that would go away. So it's possible she can kill people even after she's been eliminated, which is kind of entertaining. And that's it for what's in the box here for Red Dragon N6, the villains. And as I said, it's a really great starting point. It's a full playable expansion by itself. It's a base set. You get the new dungeon tiles. Each of the characters has some kind of unique thing where if you look back at the original sets, Red Dragon in 1, 2, and 4 were very basic. All of the characters were pretty simple. I think in 4 there was only one character that had a special new mechanic. And they were very nice and balanced and easy to teach. This one scales up quite a bit compared to those in the fact that every single character has some sort of special and unique ability, which sets them apart. Darika, or however you pronounce her name, is probably the most basic of the ones in here, but she has all those cool cards that allow you to take control of things, which are kind of cool and unique. The big thing here, though, is the boss battle, the new game types that are in the rulebook here. And that one versus many mechanic, as well as the two-headed giant and all that stuff. The dungeon deck is very similar to the Sea Event deck, like I've said before, but offers some new experiences there. And it's a cool thing because you can add it to any of your games. You can leave it out of your games if you don't want to, just like the old Sea Event deck. So that's a cool new addition to the game as well. The bosses overall, though, they've started releasing more. I think 2 more have come out since this game came out. So they expand upon that mode of the game as well. I like the fact that they're all dual use there as a boss and as a normal playable character. And they all feel very different. The mummy passing out the scarabs, the vampire switching his forms. That's kind of reminiscent of Aaron the Ever-Changing, but at the same time, the different forms, hers just give you a set ability. These allow you to use completely different abilities out of the decks, which you have to buy using your blood tokens. I also didn't mention that once you buy those and they're used, they go to your discard pile, they get shuffled back into your deck, and for the rest of the game you get to keep those that you have bought, so you keep expanding your deck. It's almost like a deck builder type mechanic. And as the game progresses, you're going to get more and more of those that you've unlocked that are in your deck that'll keep coming up. So that's kind of a cool thing there as well. You have Toggle Snarf, who's got less cards than most of the others for his special mechanic. I think he's got 4 or 5 minions in there. But the minions are a cool new thing. They're recurring, they stay in play, and they keep getting those effects unless people outright attack them and you don't have money to pay them to keep them around. And overall, it's a good expansion, though. There's a lot here, and if you've already got a couple of the basic core sets and you're already familiar with the rules, then it's definitely worth taking a step up to pick this up. I would say if you're newer and you're still learning your way around, you might be better off picking up Red Dragon in 4. Then you get the Sea Event deck, so you still have that option that you can add on to the game, but it doesn't overcomplicate the characters with a bunch of new mechanics. If you think you can handle the extra added rules for the mechanics of each of the individual characters, and you want this extra book that has all these other game types in it, which you may be able to get those online, I'm not positive, but then definitely look into this one. In the least, it won't disappoint you. You have that one versus many format that you can play now with the bosses, which is kind of cool. Lets you change things up a little bit. And I do like the idea of the dungeon deck to kind of add some interesting, unique twists, even on top of what we already had in the C deck. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for our look at Red Dragon Inn 6, the Villains expansion. Hope you enjoyed the video. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.